All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Sam. First and foremost, I'm a husband and father. My wife, Haley, and I have been married for about 10 years. It does not feel like it's been that long. I'm amazed. It's flown by. We have three amazing children. We got a 7-year-old, a 3-year-old, and now a 9-month-old. They just keep coming. I don't know. I can't tell you. I don't know. I don't know how many more we'll do, but yeah. So currently, I am director of customer experience for Groundworks. It's the kind of the largest foundation services provider in North America. So we do all sorts of stuff in the home services realm, from foundation repair and waterproofing and all sorts of stuff. That might sound boring to many, but I really, really love it. Anybody that tuned into General Conference a year ago when President Nelson was talking about the work they were doing under the Salt Lake Temple with the underpinning and all that, that's what we do.
Oh,
So yeah. So as director of customer experience, there really my purview, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but my job is to really just ensure that we're taking good care of people and drive a lot of revenue, and that's what I do. But yeah, that's, I think, me in a 5-second nutshell.
so how did you get from BYU, Idaho to where you're at now?
Oh man, it's kind of a crazy story. I look back, not how I thought it would have turned out when I was in school, but I'm very privileged and blessed to have gone through what we did. So I think kind of starting at the beginning, my whole life, kind of before getting to BYU Idaho, I had always told myself I was going to be a doctor. My dad is a doctor. My mom's a paramedic. My uncles are all doctors. I come from a medical family, and I love my dad, and I'm going to be just like my dad. I'm going to be a doctor. I get home from my mission and get to BYU Idaho, and I start to use my electives to enroll in medical classes to start getting myself in that direction. And I hated it. I hated it so much. I hated these classes. I hated the subject. I hated everything. And so, kind of, it felt like the rug had been pulled out, the foundation that I built my life on. My whole life, I told myself, when everyone else, I'm going to be a baseball player. Look, I know there's not an athletic bone in my body. I never thought I was going to play baseball. But I told myself I'm going to be a doctor. And now I'm 20 years old, and I'm staring down the barrel of, I have no idea what I'm going to do with my life now. And so I heeded the advice of some amazing professors, and I started to just experiment, use my electives to take a variety of classes across a ton of subjects. And I think BYU Idaho does an amazing job at making sure you're exposed to a lot of different stuff, I think, to help people like me. And I took a class that absolutely changed my life, and it was Introduction to Philosophical Reasoning with Brian Merrill. And that class just sparked this passion in me that I had never had for anything before that. I remember Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9 a.m. I'll never forget when I had that class. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I would sit outside of the room and do homework so I could listen to what they were talking about. And it was the first time that I just found myself doing homework for fun and studying Kant for fun, and just I really enjoyed it. And so now I was like, shoot, I just made the pivot from I'm going to be a doctor to I really like philosophy, and what does this mean for the economic outlook of my family throughout the course of my life? And that was kind of scary. And eventually I determined, what, I'm going to continue to explore it. I love this topic, but I'm going to keep exploring. And then I found myself in your class doing Introduction to Political Science. And I found the same exact passion. Of course, they're so similar,
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, this is just the practical application of philosophy in all of these ways. And so that was another class. I found myself over weekends, researching democratic peace theory and just doing, and I just loved it. I loved everything about it. And so I figured out, okay, all right, political science is a much better, I think, direction for me to take right now than philosophy. And so I started going down that route. And then about a year later, Brother Newswander shows up with his intro to public policy class, and I start taking that. And then I ended up switching over, really because he gave me pizza. He offered pizza. He had a mixer, and he really cheaped out on that pizza, by the way. I need to talk to him about that. But no, he was extolling the virtues of the public policy and administration major, and it just really resonated with me. And so I switched over, and again, just loved it. I loved every class. I loved the subject matter. I loved studying. Not to say it wasn't hard. It was, but I just loved it. I loved being with other individuals that were just really intelligent and that cared about what was going on in the world, and having professors that were men and women that to this day I can look to and say, that's who I want to be when I grow up. And just absolutely loved it. And so more to kind of how I got to this point in my career, I'm wrapping up my degree. I'm about 5 months away from graduation. This is 2020, so COVID, right, which was lovely. And I'm starting to weigh grad school, no grad school. I apply to a couple of grad schools, and I end up getting contacted on LinkedIn by a headhunter for a pretty big advising consulting firm called Gartner. And somebody from this organization had seen my LinkedIn profile. And throughout my time at BYU Idaho, I was very involved in student support. I had worked with you and Brother Newswander, and was able to secure some high profile internships with a law firm over in Luxembourg. And so I had some good experience on my resume, and I took time to really cultivate a healthy LinkedIn profile. And a recruiter found that LinkedIn profile. And so about 3 or 4 months before graduation, she reached out to me and said, "Hey, saw your profile. You down for a quick conversation?" And that conversation resulted in an absolutely grueling 7 round interview process. And so about 2 months before graduation, I was offered a job to join Gartner in kind of a client partner role. And so, given my degree in public policy, my job was to advise federal and state government clients that were going through big change initiatives. And so I worked with the Library of Congress, the House of Representatives, a lot of departments of transportation. Nobody like high profile, right? I worked with all the people in the back end, like the CTOs and the CFOs that were just going through big migrations, or they were going through big projects. And my job was to work with them and make sure that they understood how to navigate these changes effectively and align resources to them, is essentially what I was doing. And so when that happened, again, 2 years, I was like, oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to get an MPA. That's what everyone does. That's what I'm going to do, because that's the path, right? That's what you do. You get a public policy degree, and then you get a master's in public administration from BYU, and then you just ride off into the sunset for the rest of your life. And my wife and I just got on our knees, and we were like, you know what? I think we're just going to enter the workforce, and we're going to get going. And so we made that decision. And I was at Gartner for about a year and a half when another position opened up in the L&D department. That's not labor and delivery. That's different. I had to learn this the hard way, in learning and development. And so I was able to do something very similar to what I did for student support at BYU Idaho, where I was building curriculum and leading kind of instructional design, onboarding new hires and creating mentor programs, and being able to kind of scale that out across the United States, South America, and Europe, and loved that. And did that for about another year and a half. And then again, somebody contacted me on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, we're building this thing in Virginia Beach, and saw your experience." And it was the guy that reached out to me was a BYU grad, and said, "Hey, I see you went to BYU Idaho, and you've got a lot of experience that I think we need. We're currently building this call center in Virginia Beach." And I heard call center, and I was like, "Where? How far have I fallen?" I did not have a good, I didn't have a good I don't know. I didn't have a good outlook on call centers. I didn't understand them very well. But the money was very, very good. And so I said, yeah, let's go. And so moved my family from Florida to Virginia Beach, and did that. And I fell in love with it. I can't explain how, just, building a call center, it never could have imagined that's something that I would do or even enjoy, but I just loved it. And I did that for about a year and a half. And then in March of last year, I took over the whole customer experience operation as the director of the department. And so now I've been doing that for a little over a year, and still just love my job and pinch myself that I get to do this every day. It's great.
Wow. So the center is still up and running, still going well.
It is, yeah. Luckily, if it wasn't, I don't think I'd be in the position I'm in now. So it hasn't burned down. No, it is in much better hands now than it was when I was running it. But yeah, so I kind of stepped up, and now I have purview of the whole department, including still that side of things. But yeah,
It's fascinating to me. You start down one path, and then the Lord just kind of leads you down a totally different path.
yes,
And when you're first doing something, you have no idea, right? But when you look back, you're like, oh, now it all makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. That's been our experience every single time. When you're worried, you fall on your knees and you pray for help, and you seek guidance, and it comes. Imagine that.
You're doing exactly the job that I would say 90% of the business majors at BYU Idaho wish that they could do, right?
Yeah,
But you
yeah.
don't have to get a business degree to do what you're doing.
And I would even go farther, and I would say that a political science or a policy degree have done so much more for me than a business degree would have done. And they have set me apart. I am in a sea of business majors. And forgive me, I'm not trying to go on a self-aggrandizing spree, but just more talking about just what this major does. You talk about what it takes to be effective in a leadership role. Really, my job at the end of the day is to be an influencer of people. That's what I do. An effective director, effective vice president, effective leader I'm not doing, the day to day work myself. My job is to hire good people, to train people, to understand how my department contributes to the mission of the overall organization, and then to create policies and procedures, and then delegate so that people effectively implement those policies and procedures, and we win. It is influencing people. And when I think about public policy and political science, like that's what you're doing. You are studying complex topics. When you're doing essays, the dreaded poli sci essays that I still to this day I can't fathom why people complain about it. Because what you're doing is you're looking at this really complex topic. And what you're being asked to do is, hey, take this really complex topic, research what some really great minds have said about it, break it down, and then form an opinion and then articulate that opinion. That is exactly what you're going to be doing in the business space or in any leadership position you're ever going to have. My job is to look at tons of data, complex problems, break them down into bite-sized steps, formulate an opinion on them, and then build policy off of that and then go. And I was able to do so much more of that in poli sci and in public policy than I could have done. And I'm not trying to slam the business department. We have an amazing business department at BYUI, but I really feel that just the interpersonal skills, the written skills, the analytical skills, I was able to build that so much more effectively in my major than I would have been able to do with a business major.
Well, and it matters that you had a passion for the subject, right? So people who don't love business, you can develop those skills in a field where you love the subject matter, and then it prepares you
Absolutely.
to work in business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And look, in so many fields, the degree that you get matters, right? Especially if you're looking to graduate school. If you want to go get an MPA, then a public policy degree is good. If you want to go to med school, then having a biology degree is good. But for general, if you're going to go into business, if you want to become a leader, an effective leader in business, I really think what you study doesn't matter as much as getting a degree and doing well. And that's going to be so much easier if you really love what you're doing. Now, obviously, different degrees are going to offer different proclivities and different skills, and I firmly believe to this day that that public policy or political science really just make you so well rounded to be able to go and influence people, which is I think what a lot of people want to be doing.
So you touched on this briefly, but I wonder if you could share a little bit more about the time when you're ready to go get an MPA and you realize that isn't the path. Like what was that like for you? Yeah.
Yeah, it was scary. I think that's kind of the theme is I've had all these periods where I was really scared and then it all worked out. It was just fine. And I think it's apropos we're studying the Old Testament right now. And gosh, I feel just so akin to the house of Israel. Where I'm messing up and I'm scared and then it all works out. But yeah, so we're nearing graduation. It's COVID. So everything is remote. And I think really too, I still hadn't matured to the point where I had grown past the I was going to be a doctor thing. I think I was still kind of scrambling to figure out, what is my life going to look like? I had found this topic that I really loved. And I think I found a lot of refuge in, okay, I'm safe now. I found my thing and I've got 2 or 3 more years of school where I'm safe and I don't have to worry. And then, as graduation approaches, as is so often the case, despair distills upon your soul as the dews from heaven and you get ready. And so I was kind of nearing graduation. I was about 7, 8 months away and I was just terrified. I was like, I don't have the next thing set. I don't have the next thing lined up. My peers in my cohort that were a lot smarter than me that had already been accepted to their programs. And I'm looking around and thinking, oh, I'm not accepted to my program. I need to figure something out. And I was really scared. And so for me, honestly, looking back and examining, the MPA was never something that I wanted to do. It was never something that I really sat down and thought, what is this going to do for me? Is this going to take me in the direction that I want to go? I never really sat down and thought. For me, it was just 3 more years of school where I don't have to worry about what comes next. I can just set up the next thing and then I'm good. And I know that's not the case for most people. I think most were a lot more critical thinking and they built that out. But for me, I was going to go to graduate school just as a way to defer needing to figure out what I wanted to do for another 2 or 3 years. And so I'm at this point, I'm starting to put in applications and really this recruiter reached out and it's not like I made this conscious decision that I'm going to pivot from an MPA to doing a job. I just was in the spot where I felt, you know what? Let me keep my options open. I had made a LinkedIn profile and curated it. I took an entrepreneurship class with Nathan Gwilliam on campus, and he had kind of helped me set up a LinkedIn profile, and then I just spent time curating it. Look, it didn't take a lot of time, but really, I've always felt cast a wide net. Drop your net in a lot of different places, and then you have options. And so that was just a case of, as I was nearing graduation, a couple of recruiters reached out to me. And then my wife and I, once we realized, oh, this is a real opportunity, I have a job offer. So I have to make a call now. Am I going to go? Am I going to do this? And potentially never get a graduate degree, or at least get it later in life? Or am I going to stay the course, in a way that I think would be a lot more comfortable and a lot less scary? It's known territory. And so we got on our knees and we took it to the Lord and we prayed. And as is so often the case, the answer was, doesn't matter to me. Do what you want to do what feels right. Um, and I think at that point it was a financial decision. Do we go into further debt to get a degree, or do we start making money? And then in a year, I can decide that I want to go back and get a graduate degree. It's fine. And so we decided, what, let's start making money and kind of gaining experience. And I found that as I entered the workforce, my priorities changed, um, in so many ways. And I think a lot of things that mattered to me when I was in my degree started to shift. I started to care a lot less about how my career path looked to my peers. If I'm not getting a graduate degree, then I'm somehow less than the people around me. That kind of faded away. And my wife and I started to have more children, and my priorities, I think, matured and shifted to, what do I actually want? What do I want? What is success to me? Not what do I think everyone thinks is a successful person, but what do I genuinely want out of life? What does the Lord want for me? What do I need to do to maximize my skills so that He can use me in effective ways? And the more I kind of refocus on that, the less I kind of felt a need to follow this path that nobody had told me I had to follow. I had just set it for myself based on what I felt was the right thing to do. And yeah, as I grew and matured, my priorities shifted, and I came to just love what I do. And I couldn't have imagined that 6 years ago, finishing school, I couldn't imagine that I'd be here right now doing what I'm doing, and having the ability to provide for my family the way that we are. So I think that was a very long answer to a
No,
very
no,
simple
it's great.
question, but yeah.
Thank you. Um, are there things you wish you would have done while you were at BYU Idaho, or things that you think everybody should do while they're here?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And this is just one man's opinion. But for me, I think very often when you're in school, and this makes sense, right? If you think about college, it's this transitory period from youthhood to adulthood, right? You're going from being a youth to being an adult. And I think so often we get so focused on day to day. I need to get through today. I need to do it tomorrow. And look, sometimes that's necessary for survival, right? I'm just going to get through today. I'm going to get through tomorrow. But when you think about long-term career success, and you think about, what do I want to do? I really think going back to the drawing board and saying, what's going to make me happy? What does success mean to me? 20 years from now, how will I know whether or not I've been successful and done what I want to do? I think we don't ask ourselves that question enough of, not just how do I pass this class this semester, but, where do I want to be in 20 years? And it's okay to not know the answer to that. It's okay to say, I don't know right now. I'm just going to keep going, and eventually I'll get there and I'll figure it out. But just thinking about, what does success mean? For some it's financial. I want to make X amount of money by this age. Some people are very motivated by that. Others are, I want X lifestyle. I want to have a home and a car. And if, and to others, it's, I don't care about any of that. I want to do work that I deem meaningful. And so really kind of, I think, critically thinking, what's going to make me happy? What do I want? And then just realize that, when you finish school and you go into the world, nobody is going to pay you money to do nothing. You're going to get paid money to do a job that somebody needs done. And doing that job is going to require very specific skills. It's going to require a specific skill set. It's going to require proclivities. It's going to require certain knowledge. I think far too often people kind of just post graduation kind of stumble for a few years in trying to find their footing. And I really think it's because they haven't made that connection. Like, well, I did the thing. I got the degree. Where's the job? Like, give it to me now. I did it. Everyone told me I get the degree. I get the job. And then they find, oh, wait, the job that I want to do, I don't have any skills for. And so I really think it just takes some time to consider, what do you want to do after graduation? Talk to some people that do that thing, and then talk to them about, hey, not only what does it take to get that job, but what does it take to be excellent at it? What does it take to be amazing at it? Write it down and then start working on it right now. And look, I think that the final thing that I would say here is just it's very useful to take time to pause every once in a while and say, okay, this role that I want or this job that I want, what is, let me picture the epitome of excellence in that role. Let me think of somebody that is awesome at that. What qualities do they have? What attributes do they have? There is no profession, there is no job, there's no skill in this world that you will not be excellent at through the cultivation of Christ-like attributes and just acquiring spiritual gifts. There is no profession in this world that you will not be better at if you're more charitable, if you are more humble, if you're more patient, if you're more diligent. And so, really, when you're in school, we take a lot of time to build professional skills, and we should. That's what it's for. But spend equal time cultivating spiritual gifts and becoming more like Christ. You will be better at whatever it is you need to do, and you will stand out. I think we talk about standing out academically. I talked earlier about how my degree helped me stand out from people with business degrees. I think what helped me stand out even more is people recognizing that, and again, I don't mean to be self-aggrandizing here, but I just had different values, right? I worked hard. I was honest with when I didn't know what I was doing. I was honest with when I messed up. I tried to treat people well. I tried not to lie and be honest, and those things will set you apart from your peers far more than I think we give it credit for. And so while you're in school, make sure you're dedicating time to developing a close personal relationship with the Lord and be very diligent in trying to become more like him. And very genuinely, that will set you apart in a way that nothing else will.
Yeah, that's great. Sam, do you have any other advice? Anything else you want to share?
Oh, man, I think, yeah, last thing
Yeah.
is I remember, like I said, just feeling scared nearing graduation and just being worried. And I think kind of the last thing to leave with is just it's gonna be okay. To anybody that's listening to this now or in the future that's scared and thinking, hey, I don't know what the future's gonna hold. I'm nearing graduation. I don't have my internship yet. I know that's the big one. Someone coming to you, Brother Miles, I'm graduating in 2 weeks and I still don't have my internship. What do I do? Take your education seriously. Work hard. The better you do, the more opportunities will be available to you. But if you're nearing the end of your degree and you didn't do as well as you wanted to do, and you're worried about the future, it's going to be okay. I don't know when, and sure there will be some challenges, but it's going to be okay. Love the Lord, lean on the Lord, honor the covenants that you've made, and the promises that God made to Abraham are in force for you and for me. That you make covenants, you keep covenants, and you'll prosper in the land. You'll be okay. And so I think it's normal to focus and worry about internships and academics. But if you're leaning on the Lord, you're going to be fine. And in my case, that's what happened. It didn't turn out at all how I thought it was going to turn out. But I am so grateful for the last 6 years, and I am so grateful for my time at BYU Idaho, for the people that I met, for the connections that I built, for the classes that I took, the things that I learned. But above all, I am so grateful for how my college experience taught me how badly I needed to rely on the Lord every single day, and that has done more for me than anything.
That's awesome, Sam. Thanks so much.
No, of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I'm going to stop this.